Kia ora, Emma. It's really nice to be here with you to have a conversation that allows you to reflect on your time with the Centre for Family Violence and Sexual Violence Prevention. I've got a few questions, so I just want to start with, when you joined the team, what was it that attracted you to this role, and what did you want to achieve in the role of Chief Executive with us?
Yeah. Oh, look, when I joined in December 2021, I think honestly the thing that really attracted me was it was going to be hard. And I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive, but Te Aurere Kura, the strategy, had just been launched, and it heralded so many firsts for Aotearoa, for our sectors, for government, and it was hard won to get it across the line and to get it published and to get it launched. And I kind of was, looking over at the kaupapa for a long time and thinking about the challenge of it. I think for me, one of the biggest things I wanted to achieve was to really lift the trust, confidence and belief in our people and what we were here to do. And that was all about bringing the collective together. And so I was also really excited to work with a huge number of partners and stakeholders that I'd also worked with in the past, and really just to try and bring Te Aurere Kura, the vision, the strategy and the intention to life.
Wonderful. And when you think about Te Aurere Kura and getting that strategy off the ground and bringing it to life, what did you think were the most important foundations for us to be able to do that?
Yeah, so Te Aurere Kura itself is, I would say, a framework for the future. It organises where we're going into the 6 key shifts and the kind of intent, the inclusion, the groundedness in Te Tiriti that is necessary for moving forward. But nowhere in it said, and you must do this, and this to get there. So we are still carving, creating and designing that future. But in order to stand on some strong foundations, we needed to quite quickly get some things in place. One of those is, how will we know we're being successful, and how will we know along the way what changes we might need to make? So the Centre created the Outcome and Measurement Framework, and it spanned 12 outcome areas aligned to the shifts of the strategy, numerous indicators and measures, which will continue to be evolved. We absolutely must keep evolving that and keep our focus in the shorter term, the mid and the long term. But for me, what that did was really set the intention that this is grounded in well-being as its ultimate goal. It is grounded in the shifts of the strategy, and we are going to get really relentless about how we measure our progress. Early on in 2022, we launched the Family Violence Workforce Capability Frameworks, both for organisations and our people, both in government but also non-government and all the helping sectors that we traverse. And that feels like a while ago, but man, those frameworks keep on giving in terms of setting out key fundamental standards and practice for all of the people working, interfacing with, preventing and responding to family violence, and speaks to what good looks like across a number of areas. And for me, those frameworks are an important grounding for, again, what we should be aspiring to and how we train to that and how we keep developing our workforce. Workforce is going to be the golden thread that runs through all of our achievement into the future. We also set about trying to really engage with a diverse range of communities. So we set up arrangements with a really wide range, from Pacific practitioners to our ethnic communities, our Rainbow Prevention Network, a number of groups. We set up the Disability Reference Group, a number of key engagements that were with the whole intention to share and learn and drive forward together. This is never going to work if we sit in Wellington and dream up the future and just try and roll that out. And I know from time to time we ebb and flow with those relationships and how well we're doing with truly partnering, but that's been a really key foundation. One of the the greatest things I think that happened in that time as well is that we established the Ministerial Advisory Group for Māori, Te Pukotahitanga. What an incredible group of both individuals but as a collective, and for the huge number of people that they were representing in of themselves, and bringing those powerful voices to the table together to look at the ways forward, in particular for Māori, but how we would hold ourselves to account for outcomes for Māori, and ensuring that we were upholding our obligations and the partnership principles under Te Tiriti. So for me, those were really essential kinds of foundations with which to base the work on.
Great. So you mentioned there the importance of specialists and communities of interest being involved in the work to implement Te Ao Rere Kura. Why do you think that's so important, and how can people be involved in the implementation of the strategy and its action plans?
I almost want to take it one step further and say they ought to be leading this strategy. I think Te Ao Rere Kura, yes, was born out of a huge amount of sector engagement, and yes, government has ultimately created that and published it. But the future of changing intergenerational violence in this country rests with all of us, but where that expertise is closest to whānau, and that is in community, and that is in the specialist sectors and providers, advocates, people who walk alongside whānau every single day to make that change. And that's a wonderful aspiration. It's really hard to make that happen at times, and to have the necessary kind of arrangements and structures and supports in order to really put them in the driving front seat, but we should continue to aspire to do that. Expertise about what is working and what is not working, what fundamentally gets in the way of our success, is coming from those places and spaces. Communities are the ones 24/7 responding, creating the healing pathways and preventing family and sexual violence. And so hearing from and enabling ways of working that bring that to the fore is so key. Victim survivors, importantly, form a really integral part of the voice that should be driving this mahi forward. And I think at our peril, we don't listen to those voices. I've had experiences both at the centre and in other parts of my career where it has been the voices of victim survivors that have completely turned the dial on what government thought it was going to be doing and changing the course of that. I have seen the power of that, and I think we absolutely need to double down and keep working really hard to ensure that that is part of our work.
Great. Good one. So I was going to ask about that, so I'll just skip that. I'll turn now to talk about the board and the Public Service Act and kind of how people are working together. Previously the centre was an informal joint venture from 2018, and then in 2022 we became an interdepartmental executive board under the Public Service Act. What do you think people are learning about how to work together on these complex issues where lots of people have got responsibility in the system? And how do you think we're doing?
Yeah. So, the introduction of an IEB was really important. It was a formalisation of an intention to work collaboratively and to work across silos. The IEB brings with it some really important layers of accountability. So the chief executives of that board collectively are accountable to the Minister for Prevention of Family Violence and Sexual Violence. Really critical that we have those lines of accountability. We have worked with the board over the last year or so to even further strengthen those accountabilities across the table with one another. I know that quite often providers and people out in community experience government quite often in its own separate lanes. The whole intent of our work is to cut across that and not just look joined up, but actually be joined up. And I have to say that right from the beginning, there has been no absence of true commitment to the kaupapa. That has completely been there and has always been, at the forefront. What is hard is when underneath that you've actually got to line up budgets, resources, strategic intention, how we measure what we're doing. We've got to, if we want to start something new, we've got to think about what's already in place, and we have to create space for new things to come on board. And I think for me that's probably been one of the biggest aha moments, is that you can have all this gusto in the world and all the effort and all the drive, but you need all of those processes, structures, people, capability, all those other things to kind of line up underneath it. And so, the IEB is a really important construct for the future and for holding to account those agencies, including the centre, to work in ways that are aligned to the strategy, that are seeking to achieve the same set of outcomes, that is also seeking to align investment. And that is really what we are here to do.
Great. Do you think there's sufficient understanding across Aotearoa New Zealand and in government of the dynamics of family violence, the different forms of family violence, and also sexual violence?
In a word, no. I think for most of us, we have an understanding, often either through what family, whānau, and other friends have experienced. For many people, it's what they've seen on television, it's in the movies, it's in kind of social media, and it's sort of a depiction of what that looks like, and that's something that sort of happens over there. When you start unpeeling the layers and the complexity and the dynamics that underpin both why violence occurs in the first place, what sustains it, and perhaps what then can counteract it and help for people to leave those relationships and or perhaps repair them in different ways. It is long, it is historic, it comes in many different forms, and one of the biggest overarching paradigms in my perspective is coercion and control. Is ultimately it is a challenge of power, and power being misused in the under the context of relationship and love, which is a really potent combination of dynamics that it makes it so hard to counteract. And so I think that there's so much more that could be done to talk about these forms of violence. We talk quite a lot about family violence. We do not talk nearly enough about sexual violence. We do not talk about child sexual abuse and the exploitation of children, which is happening every single day in this country. We do not talk about those challenges nearly enough. When you start to bring those into the light, we can actually start to combat that. And so, I think there is a road to go, and we should never, just because we know the stats and just because we understand it, we shouldn't forget that we are not the ones we need to be convincing. It's actually, all of New Zealand, and so we've got to keep talking about those things.
Right. So Emma, reflecting on your 4 years with us, what do you think have been your key achievements? What are you most proud of in this time?
There's so much to be proud of. I said, at the beginning it looked really hard, and I wanted to come in and kind of really help to pull it together and move ourselves forward. And I feel like 4 years on, I feel like I can go, yes, I've done that. I feel like we've shifted. One of the biggest things I'm proud of is our team, the team we've built, the capability, the way in which our people have moved with those times, have moved with the complexity, have continuously risen to the challenge, because man, it's been challenging. I'm really proud of the relationships that we have forged, the relationships with community through our work in the integrated community response. The teams are out there today working with community to uplift the multi-agency responses that we see in communities every day. The expertise that we are bringing to things like the high-risk protocol, the information sharing protocols that are going to underpin how communities are responding to family violence. Yeah, I'm really proud of the way in which we've been a convener. These are not formal roles, right? But the way in which we informally create forums for specialists, for voices to come together. Our annual hui that we ran, a couple of years ago. Those were fabulous events that brought multiple diverse perspectives together. Not to say, "Hey, aren't we great?" but to say, "Right, we've got a job to do. What next? Where are we going?" And I think that the mindset of learning and being open to different is one of the things that I'm really proud of, and I'm proud that we've cultivated that in our people. Yeah,
right. Are there any things that you had hoped to do in your time, or parts of the system that really require more attention?
Yeah. Prevention would be my number one area, which I feel like it's been, whilst prevention is happening around us, yes, today, the investment is very low. So we're only investing, I want to say, between 3 and 5% of what is going into family and sexual violence direct funding into prevention. That is a major problem. We have prioritised a few things to get stronger responses, because that is often where the need is, like right in front of us. We have to be able to respond and make sure that families, people are getting what they need when they need it. But we keep pushing that whole prevention construct a little further away every time we do that. And so one of the biggest challenges is every trade-off in this space feels like failure. Every time you pick one thing to do over another, it feels like you're not doing enough. So for me, prevention, primary prevention of family violence and sexual violence has got to be the next major orientation. And when I say that, I don't think it's a case of we just need more programs, or if only we had 2% more funding in prevention, it would all be fine. It's not that. We, as a collective, as an IEB, have to orient ourselves in everything we do to prevention. Everything we do must be stopping violence from occurring again. It should be bringing down the severity of what is happening. It should be minimising the risk factors. It should be raising up those protective factors. And everything we do needs to be a prevention sort of moment or interaction. And I think with that comes a much greater movement, because what is required is at such a scale that we all need to be orienting our policies, processes, our workplaces, our businesses, our sports clubs, everything toward preventing harm.
Great. There's an area of work that some of our stakeholders have raised with us as being a gap, and that's around online harm and technology facilitated abuse. What's your view of that issue and how that might be progressed in future?
Yeah, so it's major. It is the train that has already left the station and is like five stops ahead of us. Online harm in particular for us, that intersection particularly with sexual violence, with childhood sexual abuse, exploitation, technology facilitated abuse that can happen, the advent of our young people being just served up really inappropriate, harmful content, pornography. The storylines of pornography, the vast majority of those are about incest and family sexual violence. That wave is massive, and it's crashing, and it's crashed. One of the great things that we need to do collectively, again, as an IEB, but actually more broadly, this is sort of to all agencies, all government, and we need to start gripping up what that actually is, and the significance of that, and start talking about those harms and looking at education and other regulatory, there's a whole raft of ways in which we can try and improve. Internationally, other countries are doing seem to be doing a lot more, a lot faster than New Zealand, and I would just really advocate that we start to confront this. We've certainly done some work here in the centre to get the first step of our work program looking at this. Our board has had a conversation about it, which is great. We need to just keep pushing on that. And I think too, with any of this, there is no one thing. If only we did this, everything would be fine. This is sort of an assault on all fronts. We have to be looking at all layers, as I say, alleged policy regulation, as well as education support. Again, our workforces, so many of our specialist workforces are not equipped to be dealing with the advent of online harms as well. And so, there is work underway to start to bring that capability up, but we've got to look at the online world just as we are looking at the in real life world. We've got to be thinking about both environments.
Great, thank you. So, Emma, what gives you hope for the future? And what do you think, the future might look like as this work continues?
What gives me hope for the future? It's iwi Māori. They are constant. They are not going away. The solutions for Māori who are most impacted by family and sexual violence lie with Māori. And I have seen firsthand the differences in the changes that can be made. And to me, that gives me real hope. Hapori community gives me hope. Being part of community, the ways in which people are working to come together around these challenges, you just see it in action all the time. And to me, those two things give me real hope for the future, because ultimately Te Rere Kura is about community leading the way, iwi Māori leading the way, and I feel very hopeful for that. I feel hopeful that I feel like we've taken a step under Te Rere Kura. I feel like that step can't be walked back, and I feel that we've got to just keep taking more steps as we go. I feel really hopeful because of the expertise that is out there, that we engage with every day, that we know in terms of the people, the institutions, the networks, all of those great advocacy bodies. They are not going away. They've been here way before me, and they will continue to be here way after me. And so I know that this work will continue. We've seen the power of advocacy in having the stalking law reform happen, and that coming into fruition just recently. That was because of really strong advocacy. I'm hopeful because of the innovation that we are seeing, things like Tika, with Zoe and Ellie coming together to create an online platform for survivors of sexual violence to have an alternate pathway to justice. I mean, incredible mahi, and that innovation, bringing that together with the greatest needs and making it completely victim-centred, that gives me such hope for the future.
Excellent, thank you, and thank you so much for your service with the Centre. You've been an amazing Chief Executive and leader in the sector, so thank you for that.
Thanks, Deb.